Welcome to the HR Happy Hour Show. It is our 15th anniversary, show number two of three special looking back shows we're doing. Trish and I did one a week or so ago where we talked about the show and our some of our memories from it. And on this show, we are so happy to be joined by four of the original HR Happy Hour friends, fans, guests, supporters, right? All of it combined who are joining us today. So we got a full house here today. Of course, Trish, you first. Welcome. Hi, how are you? Thank you very much. Really, you sort of spearheaded this idea of, hey, we should really celebrate the 15th anniversary of the show.
Yeah, no, and honestly, you said four guests. I would count myself today as a guest because when you started this show 15 years ago, I was a guest. Or just honestly, even a listener most of the time. So a lot has changed. And yeah, I just thought, obviously, we're all still kind of in our same little community, but everybody's doing something different 15 years later. And I thought it'd just be a fun way to get everyone back together.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. So thank you for everybody for being here. Thank you for listening. Thanks to our friends at Paychex, of course, for all their support. Go to paychex.com/AWIA for all the good stuff from them. But Trish, let's start doing a quick round of introductions. First up, Lance Hahn. Lance
Hey,
lives at the intersection of work, life, and technology. He is the vice president of market insights at the Star Conspiracy and writes and speaks about all things work and technology. Lance made his HR Happy Hour show debut on episode 4. That was a long time ago. Lance, how are you?
good. Glad to be here after 15 years.
All, all of us could probably say that. I'm
Seriously, yeah.
glad to be still upright. Yes, absolutely. Well, welcome, Lance. Next we have Lisa Rosendahl. I can't believe we got you for this, Lisa. You are hard to find, but we found you. Lisa Rosendahl has been providing HR leadership for over 30 years in a variety of roles in the public and private sectors. She served as an officer in the U.S. Army. That's pretty awesome. And is currently a national HR consultant with the Department of Veterans Affairs. She actually trumps Lance Hahn in that her HR Happy Hour show debut was on episode 2. How
Ooh,
about that? Episode 2. Lisa, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing great. That's probably the one and only time I'll ever trump Lance Hahn, but I'll take it.
Yeah, you got him. Well, it's great to see you. It's been a while,
Nice to
but
see
thank
you
you.
too.
Thank you for being here. We have Robin Schooling, the inimitable Robin Schooling. That's not in there, Robin. I added that word.
I like that.
Is the director of talent strategy with the HR consulting firm Yuma Riso and is a self-proclaimed advocate of the workplace revolution. She's the co-host of the other popular HR podcast I've heard about called Drive Through HR, which has been around for a very long time as well, and has a long-running HR blog. Yes, that is still a thing. And she remains on a quest for the perfect French 75. Maybe right now as we record, I don't know. But Robin, how are you? Welcome.
I am fabulous, and I sadly am not enjoying a French 75 in my lovely 15th anniversary HR happy hour.
That's great. Yeah, if anybody catches this show on YouTube or sees any of the clips, we did create some swag that we tried to get out to everybody. I'm not sure it made it to all the guests, but we did do some swag for the show. Our last guest we will welcome, and that's so special to me to have her. Just because of all the support she showed this show at the very beginning when it was completely unwarranted, but is Lois Melbourne. She was the co-founder and CEO of Acquire, who were the creators of the original Org Publisher software, which is an amazing piece of software, by the way. I was a user of Org Publisher. My God, that thing was awesome. And other workforce tools. After selling the company, Lois has focused on travel, helping kids explore their careers, and writing books. Lois, welcome to the HR Happy Hour show, and thank you again for all your support.
No, I am so glad to be here. It's so exciting. It's been 15 years.
I know, and I'm going to try not to talk about Org Publisher too much, but I mean, because I really love that product, but I won't say any more about it. But Trish, so let's go to you first. You said you're sort of like a guest on today's show and not the host, but that's cool. I'll do the heavy lifting. 15 years ago, Trish, 2009, when we started this show, what were you up to? And then why did you listen to this silly show?
Yeah. So, well, I was newly on Twitter, probably at the end of like 2008. And back then there were no lists. We were all just kind of struggling to find other HR professionals. And I know that everyone on this call are some of the very first people I started sort of following and interacting with. And that's how I heard about the show. You were just someone that came up kind of in that group. So I thought, well, I'm going to listen to this thing. And for me, it was really important because my kids were, oh gosh, 2009, they were like 4 or 5 years old at that point. The twins were. And so I wasn't someone who was able to get out and network after work, like in person. And so for me, the HR happy hour was my way to network. It was a way to get online, and it was so interactive. And I was a practitioner at that time. I was working as a director of HR at Fleischman Hillard, and I just looked forward to it. So it was a live show. There was no way I was going to miss that show, whether I was in the car, at a football practice, at a whatever, um, because I learned from it.
Yeah.
So yes, it was fun to network and get to know everyone. And at that point we hadn't met in real life either. So it was such a unique sort of time, I think. And but I really felt like everyone both on the show today and even kind of in those early days, I felt like they were my real friends, that even though I hadn't met them yet, I had this really strong, solid bond. And it was just very important to me. That was like the one thing I did for me.
Mhm.
So I went back and looked. I listened to every show. I may have called in and listened on one of those first two or three, but the first one I was on was actually even after Lance. So I was on, I think it was episode 5, which
Okay.
was HR evolution. And that was kind of coinciding. We were all trying to figure out, now that we've found each other on the HR happy hour and on Twitter, how do we meet?
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
so
Well,
it's just
cool.
super important. Yeah.
Yeah, Lisa, I haven't seen you in forever, so welcome back. Lisa, do you remember 15 years ago? What were you up to? Do you have any early memories of this group of folks and this show at all?
Listening to Trish, I think you and I lived the same life. I was an operational HR manager at a medical center. I had a daughter who was about 7 at that time, and I worked. That's what I did. And HR happy hour was kind of my time outside of work. I worked for the federal government, so you're in the federal sphere, and to just kind of engage with people outside of the workplace who were doing the things I was doing and actually doing things that maybe have been more creative. I really look forward to that. I do remember the show I was on. I don't remember what the family was doing. We were doing something, but I'm like, stop. I have to go, right? And I ran upstairs, shut the bedroom door, sat on my daughter's bed and dialed in,
Wow.
and I don't even remember what we talked about or what we did, but, I'm clocking down the time and it's like, I got to go. And it was just like, that was just my time. And I was trying to make the connection between HR happy hour and HR revolution.
Mhm.
So thanks, Trish, because they were so closely connected. But I remember looking forward to that. And it was like all of the avatars came to life when we were there. You're so used to seeing people's pictures on the screen, and to see everybody in person, it just made it that much more richer and deeper. It was amazing. It was
Yeah,
amazing.
and sure, 15 years ago, even probably 5 years ago, honestly, we weren't doing endless video calls as just a normal part of our work. And so we just weren't seeing people unless we went to see them at an event of some kind, right? Like doing video chats and video calls was just not a thing in 2009. I'm not sure when it became a thing, but it definitely wasn't back then, right? Yeah.
Well, and look at us 15 years later, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't talked to you guys in like a long time. Like, I see you on Facebook and we're connected here and there, but we can get on a call and it's just, we have that, like, it's just real and it's there. And
Yeah.
so, from humble beginnings, look at what you guys did with the show. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
for sure. Robin, you were part of that group too, like one of those original HR leader practitioners. And what were you doing in 2009 though? I can't remember specifically because you've done everything in HR,
It
I think, at
floated
this point.
around. 2009, I was about halfway through my tenure. And I was there 7 years. But I was the head of HR at the Louisiana Lottery at the time.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so I was, again, a practitioner, knee deep in day to day. I was very involved with SHRM at the time. And that was my world, right? And I liked my job and I enjoyed the SHRM stuff, but I was restless because I felt like it was the same old people or ideas. And sort of timing wise, as Trish talked about, I got on Twitter end of 2008. And poked around and started to find people and exactly that, found HR Happy Hour. Lance, I think you were one of the first people I probably followed on Twitter for sure. You and China Gorman. I remember following China Gorman very early on.
Wow.
And then yes, found the show and didn't miss a one. I can remember so clearly on Thursday evenings that I would make sure, okay, dinner's done, the kitchen is cleaned, everything is ready. It's 6:45. And I've got to get back to my office and get ready for the show. And my husband knew every week that that's what I was going to do on Thursday night, whether I called in or whether it was just the infamous Twitter back channel, which I'm sure we'll focus on specifically. At least I intend to. And my first show, I don't know when it wasn't a very early one, but when I was a guest, as opposed to just I'm hanging or calling in, was Jennifer McClure and I together were the guests for a show. And I was so nervous. So nervous.
You were nervous?
Oh my God.
We'll have to dig that one up out of the archives and retweet that and share
I will tell you, it was called Breaking into HR. I looked it up because I wanted to figure out when she was an official, like, talking as a guest. So you don't sound nervous on that episode. I didn't listen to the whole thing, but yeah, you sound very
terrified.
Put together.
It is amusing, and I appreciate you guys saying that. It's amusing to me to look back, though, because I used to get a little bit stressed about the early days of the show. We did it live, right, at 8 o'clock Eastern time on Thursday nights, and invariably every week or two, something would be going on, and I'm like, man, I gotta like start the show. Like I was the person who started it, right, at 8 o'clock, and I was always like, every once in a while, like, oh, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to be there. Something happened. There's something going on. I was out or something. And so, yeah, there were a couple of very, very close calls at around 7:58 p.m. But I appreciate that. Let's go to Lois first. And then, Lance, I'll come to you next. Lois, I mentioned at the top of the show, you were the co-founder of Acquire, which is a software company which had fantastically useful solutions for people whose software did not do the things it should have done for them. And we became acquainted, through that connection, I think. And then, but certainly you were and the Acquire team were so gracious to us and to the show. And so as you look back in 2009, that was probably before the company got sold, I think, probably. Yeah, it had to have been. Right. So maybe look back on that a little bit, if you don't mind, and share a couple thoughts about those days.
I think the show was so was witty, was one, but it gave a platform for people to talk about their work that wasn't the stuffy, everything has to be prim and proper about, HR and et cetera, and it just, it got real. Mm-hmm. And that was on brand, Mm-hmm. So when I think about what we were looking for and why this was such a good fit, was I just believed that this is a place where people can talk about real things. Yeah. And that was important to me because it was kind of a, no BS kind of marketer at the time and such. So the honesty and the grit and the humor and then the friendships just kind of made it a no-brainer. But I will have to say that I first staked out being a sponsor without giving any money. Mm-hmm. I gave koozies.
Yeah,
right.
Right.
So the very first sponsorship was nothing more than sending out koozies to a whole bunch of people so that they would tweet pictures of the entire
and we all did. It. So good job.
I like it. So, I wish I had one of those still. I that'd be fun if I had one. I'd put it on.
I'm sure I have it.
Put it on the Diet Dr. Pepper can here. Yeah.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah. Thank you, Lois. That it was also an interesting time too. Like lots of folks were getting connected on social media. It was really growing at that time, and the software space was changing too, right? Like cloud was now becoming the thing. It was, now look, all we're ever talking about is AI, and that'll be endless for the next couple of years. But back then, we were talking a lot about cloud software and deploying software to companies in that fashion, and it was pretty revolutionary in its own way, and it was an interesting time. To be in technology, especially in HR tech, much like it is now. But and Lance, you're in that space heavily in the HR and HR tech space. 2009, you were original episode 4, I think it said here.
Or
Many
yeah,
others, you probably appeared 8 or 10 or 15 times. I don't remember, but were you like still doing HR in 2009?
I was, yeah. In fact, I think 15 years ago, I was at SHRM. We were talking, Jessica Lee, Chris Dunn, Lori, and I were talking with China Gorman about
Yeah.
using social media and blogging
Mm,
at SHRM. And
Yep.
it was also the first time they'd ever streamed a session. So they had that. It looked like it was like from the Stone Ages now, if you could find a copy. But yeah, I mean, I think we did that, and then the thing I love about the show is that we can just cover like whatever, and kind of similar to Lois. I mean, like just being able to talk about different things, kind of have some unhinged moments. Like I think a real memorable thing was like all the Cincinnati people like calling in, and so like on the old blog talk radio thing, you see like the area code 513 come up with this 513 Mafia
yeah.
like
Oh
was
yeah,
all
I forgot.
happening. That was like lots of fun. I mean, like it was just fun because like HR, I think it's gotten better now, but I certainly in 2009 didn't feel super fun, at least for me personally. So like this was like one of the things that really opened my eyes to it. The other thing that was fun that Steve and I did, we hosted HR Happy Hour at ERE a
Yes,
couple
I
times.
do recall that. Yeah.
We did that, like we did the live stream for that.
Yeah.
And Steve did all the heavy lifting, and I just showed up and kind of did like the sidekick thing, which was fun.
Yeah, I
For
do remember that. That was really fun. And we did get to take the show on the road some over those years and
yeah,
try to do them live, either do a live show or do an actual live stream, and sort of combine it. I do remember that Cincinnati thing now. I hadn't thought about that in forever. We did a show. I don't remember what number it would have been, but it was supposed to be what's the best city for HR, I think
I
was the
remember that.
that was the gimmick of that show.
I remember that.
And we challenged people from all around the country to call in. And yeah, the Cincinnati people showed up really strong, and maybe Cleveland did too. I'm
Probably.
grasping to remember where else might have turned up for that, but I do remember that one particularly.
Yeah.
Well, one of my favorites that you did on the road was the one that we hosted in our suite at the Chicago HR Tech Show.
I remember
And
that one. Yeah.
I'm sure we broke multiple fire marshal rules during that because there was like standing room only in that room, and you were interviewing Mark Efron,
Yeah, Mark.
who
Yeah.
is at the time was still at Avon, and now is the Talent Strategy Group. And he had just launched his book.
Yeah, and
that was fun.
And I remember him kind of sitting there in that really big room full of people, and I think there was a buffet, there might have been a bar going on. I don't remember. It was quite the scene. And I think he was like looking, what the heck did I just walk into?
What have I done?
Right. I thought I was being interviewed about my book. I think maybe he had his book out at the time, and I thought he was just what was happening here. And I think in those first couple of years, that might have been maybe 2010 or something like that, or 11. But in those first couple of years of the show, yeah, it was still had that kind of, oh, it's an event thing, right? It was kind of before, and I described this a little bit, Trish, when we did the show the other day. There was a couple solid years in the early part of doing this activity where I literally had to ask people, oh, hand me your phone, like your iPhone or whatever you had, and I will instruct you how you access this HR happy hour and listen to it, because lots of people didn't even know how to do that right back then, right? And so the event nature of the show was it was a little bit different because there weren't a lot of podcasts out there. especially in this space. And it was very novel and kind of fun, right? When we were able to do events like that, Lois, like you mentioned, or the ERE events, Lance, too. And Trish, we did a
And
couple. We've done a few
and I
together.
recall too, HR Happy Hour broadcasting live at HR Evolution in Chicago,
Mhm.
because there was wherever we were for like the party the night before, and there was a red carpet,
Yeah.
and everybody came in on the red carpet, and here was the bar and the tables and the whatever, and then the HR Happy Hour, booth
Yeah.
was a room down the side,
Yeah.
and so everybody would just kind of go in there, and Steve's at the microphone, which then too again there was kind of cobbling things to go on the road with the show was
Yeah.
a whole lot different than it is now too.
It
But
was, yeah,
we
it
were
was very,
broadcasting live, and
it was
people would
very
come in, and
unsophisticated. And the idea, like, I guess it was part of just, we didn't really care what we were doing, right? It was just meant to be interesting and fun and kind of just like a group of friends. And this idea that let's do a red carpet show at an HR conference. I mean, it sounds ridiculous. Like, can you say that right now? Maybe back then it didn't seem so ridiculous because we actually did it.
Well, I think too, once we all met, then it became like family. So Lois, like by the time we did that show that you were talking about, I would feel sorry for anyone walking into that situation who wasn't part of it because the rest of us were like super close at that point. I mean, and it wasn't, you know, talking about before we were seeing each other on video all the time. Like I had no idea how old people were or what they were like. And I mean, Lance was, my HR guy online, and I had no idea he was young, but he was so smart. He was such a good writer. And here I am, an HR lady with like very few resources. I would actually like call him or email him and ask him my HR questions because he was my HR guy. So it sounds maybe silly now, Lance, but like I really admired you. And so when you would come on the show, and I was looking like you did shows, on HR and sports, on social recruiting, on like it got to be into real topics. I was like, oh my God, this guy's brilliant. Like whoever this Lance Hahn is, so in a weird way, it morphed into like taking people that you got to meet in a really fun way and then elevating them because of their skills. So for me, it was kind of that dual meaning of listening to each show. I was going to learn something on every episode,
And Lance also hosted a number of our websites over the years too.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
he hosted me. I think he did Women of HR, correct?
He
Lisa and
did.
Trish?
Yes.
So
Because there was another offshoot. Women of HR was an offshoot of the HR Happy Hour / HR Evolution
Mhm.
well,
world.
and all of us, including myself as a guest, all of us guests, that was Women of HR with a couple other people. So Lance was our
He was our token woman.
Yeah.
in Women of HR.
Yeah, so we're looking back to and we're kind of having some laughs, which is great. And some of the fun things we did, some of the live things, the red carpet thing, and there was some fun and games going on. But I do think it was kind of cool, if I can say this, to say, look, we did cover what was happening currently, right? You mentioned like social media at Sherm, Lance, right? That was like the very first time this concept of bringing in bloggers / influencers / social media people was happening in an HR space, at least at a significant level. And then, I know we did a show right after that SHRM conference on the same subject with all those same people. And so whether it was social media or recruiting or tech or stuff that was happening, like whatever year it was where it became fashionable for big companies we're not going to do performance reviews anymore, right? When that started to be a thing, like we had the guy who wrote like Stop Doing Performance Review book, on the show to talk about that for an hour and things like that. And we've evolved somewhat over the years and how we've approached that. But I guess if I were to say what I am happy about when I look back, there's two things. One is certainly the camaraderie and the friendship and the opportunities that the show gave to people to get their voices out there and get their voices heard. And the second thing was, I think, the opportunity to really talk about those kinds of important issues in a different way, right? That wasn't, HBR, or it wasn't McKinsey, or it wasn't, I don't know, some TED Talk or something like that, which are fine. There's nothing wrong with that stuff. But I thought our stuff tended to be a little bit more raw and a little bit more real.
As I was thinking about getting together to have this conversation, I was thinking back on, guests that I remembered. And this is, whatever, 10, 12, however many years ago she was on, but instantly came to mind the one show that I remember, and because I thought it was just so cool she was on there talking with us, was Sherry Turkle.
Oh yeah,
talking about kind of the changes with technology and the keeping us up, sort of
her book was
siloing us instead of bringing us together, and kind of that whole dynamic.
That is absolutely, I'm glad you mentioned that, Robin. That is absolutely one of my favorite shows we ever did. And her book was called Alone Together. And it came out in about 2011 or something like that. And it was really all about how social media and technology were changing the way people are relating to each other with a very specific focus on children.
Yes.
Right. And she was talking about the impact it was having on children and some of the events in the world, plus technologies getting in kids with phones and things like that, and how it was changing how children were growing up. But yeah, I agree, Robin. It's still probably in my top 10 of all time.
Yeah,
if I look back.
I love that one.
That was a fantastic. I mean, I think the great thing is you can always be a little bit more ahead of the time if you can kind of cut some of like the rehearsed HBR case study style things, and that's the really cool thing I like. I mean, I also like the fact that way ahead on like the podcast game, because now everybody's got a podcast, and podcasts are worth millions of dollars apparently. So if I could buy into this podcast with koozies now, I'd love, sign me up.
Yeah, that's true. It's different now.
A little more than koozie, but
yeah.
Okay, well, sorry. Maybe
I won't lie, Lance, that there's not a touch of bitterness from me from time to time when I say, wait a minute, back then we were the only ones doing this. And
that's right.
now Dua Lipa has a podcast, and I'm thinking to myself, like, I'm not trying to make pop songs, right, and take her audience, and yet she can make a podcast and come after mine. And I
taking your audience, is that
she's
same exact audience.
When I heard about that,
she's targeting the HR pros. That's what I heard.
That's right.
Dua Lipa, don't you have enough to do?
I don't remember who the guest was, but I think there was a lot of discussion amongst the group about something that will make us laugh now, and that was the remote workers. Ooh. And how that, back then it was called telecommuting.
That's right.
And there was the horror stories, and there was the wins, and there was a lot of discussion about that. And some companies were like, no, our employers won't let us do it. And others were like, how do you get around this? And it was one of those where it really became an active Q&A, because there was a lot of people with questions, and there was a lot of people with answers. And I remember it going, the Twitter chatter afterwards went on for a long time, and there was a lot of, well, let me connect with you.
Yeah.
When you could say, I know a little bit about that.
Yeah. There was a lot of power in just bringing together folks at the same time. Now we went to a asynchronous modality a few years into the show, mainly because I couldn't take it anymore. I'll be totally frank with everyone listening to this. After a couple of years and 100 some odd episodes of broadcasting live and bringing the group and the Twitter, and I just couldn't do it. It was like I was either going to quit it or we were going to do it some other way, right? Because every Thursday night at 8 o'clock. We did it every week. We very
Yeah.
rarely took a week off. It became a little bit tough for me, but we did lose something though, Lois. I think your point is really well made because we lost a little bit of that, right? When we went to becoming essentially what is just now known as a podcast, right?
Well, I think when I think of that too, I remember I was working in New York City and you happened to call me and you were telling me you were thinking of stopping the podcast. And I wasn't a co-host yet. And so you'd been doing it about 3 years and you were really exhausted. Like I think by then though, if you look, that first year it was a little more that loose, fun kind of podcast. In the next 2 years, you were tackling, I mean, I wrote down like you were tackling culture, technology, diversity,
Mhm.
like some pretty meaty topics for 12, 13 years ago.
Yeah.
And your show notes that you would write before each episode were like 8 pages long, and all the show prep you were doing. So I just remember being on the cell phone, like I'm walking through New York City, and I'm like, please don't quit. What can I do to help? And that was kind of how that happened. So I'm glad you didn't quit because I
Yeah.
think since then,
Yeah.
like, but you're right. I do miss the back channel. I definitely think of Lance specifically, like being on both Twitter, right? Watching that Twitter stream. And back then it just flowed so fast.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The Google Wave. And,
I
you
forgot
know,
about Google Wave.
Yeah.
on there doing the Twitter back channel, Google Wave. We'd have, Johnny Nick on there. We'd have
Yeah.
Paul Hebert on there. It was just, Kelly Minton at the time, right now, Kelly
Yeah.
Long, like all these people.
Yeah.
It was all ages,
Yeah.
all
You,
races,
you
all
mentioned
backgrounds.
you mentioned a few names, Trish. Look, we're so happy Lois, Lisa, Robin, and Lance could join us today. There was probably 15 other folks we could have invited, right,
Yeah.
to be part of this, and we had to stop at some point, right?
Mhm.
But yeah, some of those folks you mentioned and some others as well, were a big part of this and part of that community. Both Lisa mentioned HR Evolution earlier. That HR Evolution community was pretty tightly intertwined with the
Mhm.
what was going on the happy hour, but it was important for a lot of us. I mean, I had a day job too back then, like a real I have a job now too, but it doesn't seem like a real one all the time. But the job I had, that was a real job, like the kind you have to get in your car and drive to every
Right.
morning
Right.
and sit there all day, right? So it
The
was
show was your hobby
yeah,
at
definitely
that,
was.
and
Definitely
now the
was.
show is part of your job. So I do like
Mhm.
Mhm.
that you morphed it that way.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mentioned Robin, is now on Drive Through HR, which has been around. Robin, is it like 14 years at least? It's
Yeah.
14 or 15, right?
Will hit, it started February of 2010.
okay.
Okay.
I knew it was really
Oh,
close.
14.
Mhm.
So that was another one I listened to. It was Brian Wimpen. We actually
Yep.
just had Brian on an
We
episode,
did.
what, 2 months ago, maybe,
Yeah.
um, with his new book. But yeah, Brian Wimpen and William Tincup. And I remember listening to them at lunch every
At
day,
lunch.
Mhm.
every
Yep.
day,
Yep.
and then and this on Thursday nights. So
Yep.
I think it was that combination too of getting that real-time feedback. So I could be at work and have a new idea like that
Mhm.
and go and try it out.
Yeah.
I thought it
Mhm.
was so cool.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was good stuff. I think the last thing maybe I'll just throw out there to the group, and I do again appreciate everybody taking some time to spend with us today, is kind of if there's like one thing that stands out to you, like if you think about either your career or just the world of work, the HR profession, eh, eh, 15 years to now, is there something that's, boy, I'm either surprised by this or I'm excited by this or I can't believe this is what's happened. Is there anything that, boy, where you're sitting today? Because we've spent a lot of time kind of looking back. When you're sitting in your role today or just in the space today, is there something that, boy, this is really interesting or exciting? And maybe I'll spin it this way. I'll ask a question a different way. Trish, we've been asking just about all our guests this year about celebrating, right? Because we've been acknowledging the fact that we've done 15 years and we stopped counting the number of shows at 500. It was a couple of years ago. So I don't know how many shows we've done, probably 700 now. But is there something you're maybe celebrating this year? Maybe that's a better way to ask the question. Like uh, anything stands out to you guys?
Lisa, what about you first?
For me?
Oh,
Or
Steve?
Lisa. Okay, yeah, take it, Lisa.
I don't know, what's running through my mind is I think I'm in a really great spot in my career, and I feel like I've kind of all the work that I did early on, operational HR, learning from people, kind of getting outside my box, expanding my horizons has put me in a really great spot. I really enjoy what I'm doing. But a big thing is I'm counting down to retirement. So that's
Whoa.
kind of like on my horizon. It's like within reach. And I'm starting to think about is, even though I'm in like an HR consultant role right now, I'm still pretty connected to the field and how things get done. Is like this would be an opportunity for me to really to do something different within HR and contribute in another way. So I'm really excited about trying to figure out what that next step is for me. And so it's really kind of great that we're meeting and we're talking now because it brings me back to where we started and everything that this community has brought to me outside of that day-to-day work. And it's like I was getting a little draggy for a while, but I feel a little recharged just talking to you
Woo,
guys again.
love
So we
it.
need to do this more often,
I love
okay?
it.
We need
Yeah,
a
absolutely.
retirement
Let's not wait
podcast.
15 years.
I
So let's
say,
celebrate that we're here now, okay? That's what I'm going to
I
celebrate is
think
I can look at you guys and talk to you again.
it is really fun. That's well said, Lisa. And you could also, please retirement, start a podcast. That's what everyone's doing. So
Yeah,
that's
be on
it.
the network, Lisa.
Yeah.
I also just add before each person also goes, and Lisa, I want to throw it to you first. Also, maybe just in your personal life, right? I know you mentioned your daughter was about 7 when you started listening to the show. So just personal life changes. How is the family? What are you all up to?
Oh, well, the kid is now 23 years old. She's graduated college. She is going to graduate school in the fall. So in October, she's going to be going to Oxford. And
Wow.
yeah, so we're really very excited about that. I'm just thrilled for her. She's worked so hard to get to this point, and um, that's really very exciting. So remember, like the little kid who is
Yes,
now like an adult on her own, who's on her way to Oxford in a couple of months.
Wow.
congratulations. That's
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah. Other
Lois.
than that, the husband's still here. He retired. I'm still working, all that kind of thing. But I
You're
think that's
supporting
probably,
him.
Yeah, you can get rid of
yeah,
that. That's easy enough to, yeah. Oh, never
right.
mind.
So probably the kid. I think you all have probably may seen her, watch her grow over the
Mhm.
years,
Yes.
and Trish, just like your kids, amazing, amazing. I love watching or hearing about what they're doing.
Thank you. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it brought us all just closer in family in general. And um, we'll save it for another show. But I mean, Steve and I have talked a lot about elder care lately and just some of the challenges we all relate to with our families. And
Mhm.
again, I think a lot of people in the community that are still connected, really, we all help each other, give advice
Mhm.
to each other. So yeah,
Mhm.
it's
Mhm.
to watch all the kids grow up and all the things that are coming down
I
the pipe.
want, yeah, I want to throw it to Lois only because I'm interested, but also because Lois, you maybe have had the biggest changes over the 15 years, right? We mentioned Acquire a couple of times. Acquire got sold. You've gone on to a lot of different things since then.
Mm.
Love to get an update from you.
Yeah, life has definitely changed. It sold a choir and stayed for a little while and then retired out of there, whatever retirement is supposed to really be, I don't know. Um, but yeah, then started a nonprofit that helps kids explore careers. And that has been a lot of fun working all age of kid, even the wrinkled face kid. Because I wind up the whole spectrum, a lot of mentoring around career changes, etc. But I started writing. I released a science fiction novel. It's about ethical artificial intelligence.
Wow.
So that came out in 22. It's called Moral Code, and that's been an exciting process. I'm now working on a historical fiction.
Wow.
Um, but my kid is also 23 and has gone the full circle and actually works at Paycom.
Whoa,
Did
look
he
at that.
really?
Yeah,
Oh
he's a
my,
programmer there.
That's
he's
sweet.
Um,
still there?
so
Oh
he
my goodness.
started there in start of February.
Great.
So
Wow. We'll have to look him
Fantastic.
up.
yeah,
Yeah, they're also friends of ours and got to spend some time with them. I not that anyone cares. I did like a dive bomb into Sherm yesterday. It was in and out like in
Now
12
you don't tell
hours.
people.
But I didn't have time to talk to anybody other than who I'd arranged to talk to. But I did see the friends at Paycom, and just to yeah, that's exciting. It's a small world, right? In this HCM
It is a
space.
small world, but he's come back and he's actually working in the HR space, which cracked me up.
Fantastic.
Yeah, but life is good.
Like Lois, I think this is something like maybe you don't even know when you've inspired people and really everybody kind of on this call. Our kids watch what we do so
Mhm.
carefully as they're growing and maturing. And Lois was actually one of the people that my daughter credits for getting her interested in writing because Lois wrote a children's book
Okay.
and mentioned like named Carly like in it. And so Carly is now in journalism in college, partially because Lois inspired her about writing. And also Lois's love of F1 is now Carly's love. So
Ooh.
I think I think she's really just trying to be Lois, really. But yeah, you don't even know who you're being impressionable for, right? Just by the
Yeah.
way you're living your life and the things you're doing. All of our kids watch that because, I talk about it. I'd be like, oh, Lois is doing here. Look at Lois's pictures. So I think that's cool too, that you're not even just helping the people you intend to help, you're helping so many others as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Lance, I'll throw it to you. I heard are you starting at Oxford in September? Is that true?
Yeah.
What I heard?
Like Lisa, I'm counting down to retirement, but I've got a few more months to go. Yeah, no, no, I mean, like, I think one of the things that, especially over the last 15 years, I think I've realized I've shifted into more of a marketing and consulting role. But how many of the skills I learned as an HR person, like, have helped me out, being a critical
Mm.
thinker, being a tough interviewer, asking questions,
Mhm.
not being afraid to kind of just not know something. That's a really helpful, like, it's helped me more than I expected. Like, I expected to just like shift out of like HR and like not have to think about it ever again. I think about HR stuff all the time, maybe more now. I've got a lot more time to think about it. I spend more time writing about it, and so yeah, doing a lot more writing than I could do back then because it's part of my job, but also just because I enjoy it and I get to have a different vantage point than I did when I was like anonymously writing your HR guy
Mm.
now almost 20 years ago, which really makes me feel like I've aged a little bit. And speaking of things that make me feel aged a bit, my daughter just turned 10 this year.
Oh,
So
When we
15
met you,
years
you
ago,
had no children.
no
Right.
children. It was great. I didn't know what I was missing. But
Lance
now I'm,
created a whole human, you
yes.
guys.
Mm.
I
Like,
know, it's crazy. Unbelievable. Yeah, it was great. So I mean, that's been a lot of 10 is an amazing age. I'm told that it might get a little dicey later. I'm not worried about that. I'm not thinking about it. I'm trying to avoid it happening at all costs. But no, it's great, and the family's good. My wife went from winemaker to school teacher. Like we've gone through some changes in
Wow.
our family, but like it's been fun.
Yeah, that's
and new,
awesome.
new homes. I mean, you've moved,
Moved. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
feel like you've grown up, right? Because you were on that younger end back then, and now, yeah, you've gone through all those life changes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I've definitely grown up just a little bit. Trying not
Not too
maturity,
much.
just like my age and
It's okay.
accumulating
Like
houses.
fine wine.
Yes.
All right, let's get Robin in here before we wrap. Robin, 15
Okay.
years, 17 careers,
That's
nine,
right. Well, I'm gonna
dogs,
start with the
whatever.
with the personal stuff because my daughter, who's a little bit older than everybody else's, some of you may remember, she came to HR Revolution in Chicago when she was a young adult at the time, and she was contemplating HR. Don't know why. To Trisha's point of they see what we do, I think.
Right.
But she pivoted from that and went basically into the IT security world instead, right? But she's doing good. She moved back, left New Orleans and moved back to the Midwest a few years ago. Um, Kind contemplating counting towards retirement at some stage, but a little bit of time yet. And I have shifted and pivoted, and certainly not in-house for a few years here now, but I'll always consider myself an HR practitioner. I don't care what I'm doing. I'm just somehow, to Lance's point, all of the skills and the thinking skills and the experiences that you get, have shifted and morphed and gone to different things. I think when I look at what I would like to do yet is, and this is going to sound very touchy-feely perhaps, but because of what we're talking about, but I hope that those who are at the beginning of their HR career now, or even middle HR career, I hope they find that spark and that moment of passion like we did. Because I think had I not found, we were at the right place at the right time, and had I not found all of you and others that we found at the same time, and had the channels and the mechanisms to connect with people in a new way, I don't know what I would have become. and I don't like the segmentation. There's so much out there now and so many avenues, and there are so many places for people to go. It's kind of like we don't watch one TV show as a collective nation anymore, right? And so how do we as a collective profession, without talking about the elephant in the room organization, right? Because that's not the answer either. I was involved with that organization, and I needed more than that. So where are eager, curious, free-thinking HR professionals, HR adjacent folks that want to have those kinds of conversations? Where can they go? How do we get them there?
Yeah.
That's what I want to work on, help solve for, I guess, before I hang it up.
I love that, Robin. That's fantastic stuff. It's very inspirational.
How long have you been podcasting?
I joined with Michael. So when Brian had left, and then Tin Cup left, and so Michael Vandervoort was just much kind of like Steve was, right? Just kind of running to keep it alive. And he was kind of at the point as well where he was like, I don't want it to go away, but I'm exhausted. And he said it to me, kind of like Steve said to you, Trish. I'm like, I'll come help you.
There you go.
We're not going to let it die. I'll come help you. Difference is for us, it truly is our hobby. HR Happy Hour became incorporated into the ethos of your business, really, in so many ways. But we continue to do it because we enjoy it. And so I joined with Michael maybe 2000. Let me think. What is this? 2024? Probably 2017, maybe.
Oh wow! So quite a long time.
It's been a long time.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah. It's a grind for sure, and I do appreciate that, Robin, and yeah, I'm glad you're still doing it because because honestly, you can look back at this arc that we've looked back on so fondly over the last 15 years. I hope, and certainly the story of HR Happy Hour is an interesting and a good one, but the drive-through HR story is right there alongside it, quite frankly, right? Because it's started right around the same time and had that same kind of place in the community and still does, right?
Yeah.
So
Blog Talk Radio.
Proud of that. Right. Yeah. I never moved the show after all these years. I was told 100 times by smarter people than me, you got to put the show somewhere else, I never did.
Same.
I'm still on that same silly URL all these years later. But hey, this is great stuff. Okay. We could go on forever. We should not. I'll hold everybody to when we do the 25th anniversary show. I'll send you a Zoom invite and you can all come back for that. Well,
I hope we're all retired.
I'll be doing it from the retirement home. But thank you once again, Lance Hahn, Lisa Rosendahl, Robin Schooling, Lois Melbourne, of course, for this fun, a little bit narcissistic walk down memory lane for me, but I appreciate you taking it with me. And of course, Trish, thank you for the inspiration and the collaboration and the hosting and everything else. So Fun stuff.
Cheers to 15 years.
Cheers.
Oh, yeah, see, we got the
Yes.
happy hour.
Yes.
Happy hour.
Check us.
Thank
you.
Yes. So swag on the way if you haven't gotten it yet. But yes, thanks to our friends, of course, at Paychecks for all their support. They're wonderful to work with, and they've been with us for a long time too. Thanks everybody once again. Check out all the show archives at hrhappyhour.net. If you want to see our smiling faces and some of the things we held up to the camera, the show will be out on YouTube as well. So that's it. Thanks for listening, everybody. My name is Steve Bose. We will see you next time, and bye for now.